Welcome to the NonWing Worldwide Podcast, hosted by Drake York.
We go to the infield to Drake York. Thanks a lot, Chap.
This is the NonWing Worldwide Podcast.
Hello, race fans. Welcome to this edition of NonWing Worldwide. Coming back after a couple weeks break. Lots of stuff going on with my schedule with the United States Auto Club, covering all three of their divisions. And then also I was fortunate enough to get the opportunity to go cover the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series and ARC Menard Series races at Lucas Oil Indianapolis Raceway Park. That was a blast, and just wanted to make sure I was devoting enough time to getting ready for that. So I had to put the show on hold for a couple weeks, but in those couple weeks, a couple of tragic events have taken place, both back home from California and then out here in the Midwest too. So just wanted to dedicate this episode specifically of NonWing Worldwide to family friends of Tony Souza, Lowell Morale, and Ashley Albertson. Tony Souza was a regular on the Outlaw Karts scene out in California. Of course, if you're a fan of it now, you may know Carson Souza, who is a predominant figure in the Outlaw Karts scene. We also see him hop in a midget every now and then. He unfortunately was killed in a helicopter crash fighting fires with Cal Fire. He will certainly be missed. It's going to be different not seeing Tony Souza when I go out to the West Coast, the Outlaw Kart stuff. And same can be said for Lowell Morale. And I think if you talk to anybody from out West in California in the Outlaw Kart ranks, everybody would talk about how great Lowell is. And certainly someone that will be missed. I know for me, he is the guy that kind of helped me jumpstart my career from a guy, I say a guy, but a kid that didn't have much going on. And he gave me a steady job and, a place to come and hone my craft and try different stuff every week, and was always really supportive of me and supportive of me trying to go out to the Midwest. I remember when I called Lowell that I would have to leave Cycling Speedway. I thought he'd be mad, and he was incredibly happy. So, and Lowell, not to mention too, his entire family really has given a lot of people a place to race. And a lot of you non-wing sprint car and midget fans may know Lowell, or not Lowell specifically, but Cycleland as the place where Kyle Larson, Rico Abreu, Logan Seavey, today's guest, is a great example of people that came out of Lowell's racetrack, Cycling Speedway, and he certainly will be missed. And then last Friday, the racing world was rocked again, by the tragic passing of Ashley Albertson. She was killed in a car accident Friday, right before the most recent round with the All-Star Circuit of Champions TQ Midget Series. And we have talked about Ashley on the show back when she would run top 10 with the series, and always a standout figure in that series, and a real shame to see her go. I already saw Circle City has made their September 30th race, the Ashley Albertson Memorial, a great tribute to her. But I wanted to dedicate today's episode to the family and friends of those three fallen individuals, and just wanted to get this out of the way and just tell everybody, we're thinking about them and praying for them. And with that being said, we'll now move into today's guest, Logan Seavey. And now we welcome in our guest from Sutter, California, coming off quite possibly the biggest day of your life, not even the biggest weekend of your life, Logan Seavey. Of course, you swept at Springfield and then Macon. But first off, how's your week going so far post the double?
It's been pretty good. I played some golf on Monday and then played some golf this morning. So just kind of been hanging out. Got a few things to do just to kind of prepare for the races. But outside of that, just been enjoying the week and enjoying the nice weather here in Indy. It's really hot this week. Monday was pretty miserable, actually, but today was really nice, and went early this morning, so it wasn't too bad. And it's been obviously a good week, and lots of good things are happening. But yeah, obviously, like you said, probably the biggest single day that I've had in racing in a while, at least. Obviously the Chili Bowl is really big, but to race two different tracks and travel in between and all sorts of stuff that comes with that. And it was just a kind of a hectic day, once you leave Springfield. After leaving Springfield, I was like, man, I feel like for me, at least, that was probably going to be the harder race to win. Midgets are obviously tough, but I feel really good about going to Macon. And obviously I felt good going into Macon. I just, showed up like 30 minutes before hot laps and got it going. And then obviously played out well for us.
Has that even sunk in yet of what you've accomplished? I mean, you're now one of the three drivers to win in two different racetracks, not to mention two different cars in the same day with the United States Auto Club. Has that sunk in at all for you?
A little bit, I don't think anybody today really even thinks was ever going to be a possibility. You hear about it, in the past where they do 2 races, or, USAC kind of had a little bit broader schedule, and, the series were a little bit more split up and stuff, but, where they'd be like flying back and forth or helicopter into other races and stuff like that. But, to make it happen, right down the road, 40 minutes away, like I said, just to get 2 races in one day is, pretty wild for me anyway. But yeah, I don't know. It's pretty nuts to only have a few guys in, the history of USAC at least to do it, and to add my name onto that list is pretty dang cool.
Obviously, you drive for 2 great car owners. You got Robbie Rice in the Silver Crown, and then you got Brent Cox with Abacus Racing and the Midget, who also backs the Silver Crown effort. So when you woke up, obviously, like I said, you had 2 great cars to drive that day. But when you woke up that Saturday morning, did you think you really could win both?
Yeah, I feel like I always feel like I can win, any car I get into and any race I go to. So, it's always the goal, obviously. It's, it seems a little far-fetched. Any USAC race these days are tough. There's 40 Silver Crown cars and 30 midgets, and, just tough fields all the way around. And, yeah, just to win any USAC race right now is really hard. So, like I said, just to win one would have been awesome. But yeah, I always believe in myself and in my teams and my cars that they can win. And if I do my job, well that day, then, I end up usually running pretty well. And, yeah, both cars were good all day. The Crown was, like I said, a little bit more surprising. Obviously we were really good in that car, so it shouldn't be, but miles, you just never know what you're going to get thrown when you go there. And, I've run well in the miles, but, you just never really know. Like I said, it's a long day. Anything can happen. Those races are really hard. So, the midget, I feel like if 1 or 2 things go your way, right, and you got a decent car, you can stay up front for 30 laps and win. But the miles, you have to be good for 100. So, but yeah, like I said, I got 2 good cars. Obviously it shows every race, and, I've had unbelievable seasons with both of them so far.
And let's talk about that daring pass in the Silver Crown race. I think a lot of people, that's what they took away from the race. You lost the lead in traffic to Cottle, and then on that restart prior, he jumped the start, and it sounded like you were a little fiery over the radio about maybe you thought there should be a penalty where there wasn't. So let's start there. Did some of that aggression on that restart come from the fact that you felt like you should have been leading on that restart?
Yeah, I would say so for sure. I feel like, if you're going to call a restart back or whatever it is, I don't know. I don't really see a point in giving warnings. I feel like in racing, things are black and white. And like I said, it's nothing against Cottle. We're all trying to, get a good start and get away from the guy behind you, obviously, for as much as you can. So we're all just playing the game. But yeah, I feel like in past history with USAC, a penalty is a penalty. There's no warnings. There's no, freebies or whatever you want to call it. So I feel like I said, if I were to jump the start in second, I would have got put back. So I don't understand why there's a different precedent. And, the answer we got wasn't very good either. So it's whatever. Like I said, it worked out. It made it more exciting for the fans. Obviously, it got me a little amped up because I wasn't that close when we went into one. I really wasn't that close to them, but I knew that was probably my last shot to take the lead there. And it was my last shot. So, yeah, it worked out.
And tell us also, first off, how you made that move, because it was quite daring, like I said. And second, the track was so narrow. So where did you even find that pocket on the outside of grip to then get next to Cottle, much less clear him and get down back into the rubber?
Yeah, I'd seen most all the restarts that I had behind him up to that point. He'd gotten away from me at the down the front stretch and whatnot, but he was always really cautious into one. And, but he could, because he had a big lead, I'm sure the spotter was telling him whatever, 3, 4, 5 back. So he was, probably lifting a little earlier than he needed to, and just trying to be extra cautious. And, after restarts, when your tires cool down, you seem like you lose grip for a lap or so, maybe 2 laps. It feels like like I said, it almost feels like there's no rubber, or it feels like the track gets dirty, or whatever happens. I feel like you lose grip for a few laps. So, it kind of makes you want to be extra cautious going into one. And, like I said, I just kind of noticed he was being a little easier into one than he had been. And I was kind of arcing into one bigger than he was anyway, or wider, I should say. I was taking a wider arc into one. So I kind of felt that there was not necessarily grip, but it wasn't hurting me to enter a little bit wider than him. And and then I was, whatever I was, I don't know what you want to call it, 3, 4, 5 back, getting, at the flag stand. And he lifted pretty early, and I stayed in the throttle for a while, and noticed I was running him down, and I just kind of got to his outside and turned the thing sideways as hard as I can to drive back across to the bottom, and barely got there. By the time I got to the bottom, I was going way too fast, and I slid up almost in the dust. And Ronnie was on the radio, get back down, get back down, get back down. And I was able to get back down in front of him and get off down the back stretch really good and get away.
So you go on to win at Springfield, and then you got to take all the pictures, whatever you have to do in Victory Lane. Then you got to hop in a car and get down to Macon, just down the road to Macon. And you go from this big, wide, fast mile track to this little itty bitty racetrack at Macon, Illinois. So, people talk about how they readjust themselves to run a different car at the same track, but you had not only a different car to run, but you had a totally different racetrack to run. So what were you doing in your head on the way to Macon to mentally prepare yourself to go race at Macon that night in the midget?
I wouldn't even say there was much mental preparation for me. I feel like midget stuff in general, especially, I feel really good in, and I love those small Illinois tracks. I kind of I wouldn't say grew up, but my starting of midget career and whatnot was with Power Ride, all them racetracks, and with Keith going to a bunch of racetracks like that. And I've won a few midget races already there at Macon. So there wasn't much mentally preparing for that. I knew what we were going to do. I knew kind of how the race was going to go and how the track goes. And they've been doing such a good job with it this last year or so now. The track's been so good. So I kind of knew what we were going to get, or an idea at least, and I wasn't really worried about that. I was more just trying to get rehydrated again. When I left home Friday, I realized I have a little water pack that I put in the Crown car, and I realized I forgot it, especially for the day races. Just keep water in you throughout the races is nice, but I realized I forgot it at home. I just had it next to my gear bag. I don't know how. I just left without it, and I was just trying to get some water and fluids back in me and electrolytes back in me. I was pretty wore out after Springfield.
And I want to hit on what you just talked about right there with the hydration, stuff like that. And I feel like you're one of the best at it. Anytime I see you at the racetrack, whether you're signing autographs or you're sitting at the driver's meeting, you always got this water bottle. It's either got water or it's some hydration drink in it. So not only for just a regular race day, but a day where you had to run 2 different cars, 2 different racetrack, how important was hydration, not only hydration the day of, but hydrating before that?
Yeah, I take it pretty seriously. I feel like I sweat probably more than most of the field. And so I take that pretty seriously. I learned a lot about it when I was with the Toyota program, and they had some good, coaches and people that helped us out a lot with that, nutritionists and whatnot. But they kind of just coached us about how to hydrate right and what to drink and when to drink it. And it's helped me a lot in my, the last couple of years. I've been taking it very seriously. And but I've been taking it seriously, especially for the Crown races, longer races, or races like this week where I got the SmackDown coming up. It's going to be hot and multiple days in a row. So, just make sure, days before and especially the day of that, putting a lot of water in myself, a lot of electrolytes and salt and whatnot, all the things I need that you're going to lose when you're sweating throughout the day and throughout the race.
And Macon, you dominated Macon. I don't think we have to talk about Macon too much because it was so dominant, starting on the front row and leading all 30 laps. But what's going through your head those last couple laps at Macon? You won the Crown race. The midget race is in your grasp. Like, were you trying to fathom, like, oh my gosh, like, I'm really going to do this. I'm going to pull off something that only 2 people have ever pulled off before. Yeah,
it hits you for a second, but luckily that place is so small you don't have too much time to think about it. You're only going down the straightaway for a second, and it was tricky, big curb and treacherous. So I knew if I thought about that for a second, I could end up in the wall or flipped or whatever. So I was pretty focused just on trying to make sure I was on the right part of the racetrack. And those last few laps, I actually, changed my line a little bit. I started entering off the cushion and kind of cheating it and bouncing off of it. And I actually think I got a little bit better. So you obviously in the back of your mind, sometimes those little scenarios run through your head, but at the same time, you're focused to make sure you're doing your job, because there's 23 other guys that are doing their best too. And, if you make one mistake or wrong decision in traffic or whatnot, you'll get passed. And then it doesn't matter what you're thinking about, because if you don't win it doesn't really matter.
Well, that was last week, and obviously a historic weekend. But let's now go to the beginning of your career. What were your earliest memories in the sport of racing?
I was really young. I think I was like 3 years old, and we had some friends from home that raced Outlaw Karts, and my family bought one for my brother, and that was it. We didn't know anything about racing. My family didn't know about racing, wasn't involved, had no idea. So my brother got a go-kart, and we went racing at, Cycland and Red Bluff and all throughout the West Coast growing up, and really everywhere. But yeah, that's kind of how it started. I think I was right before I turned 5, I started getting in it. And then I was 5 years old when I started racing Outlaw Karts, like I said, at Cycland and Red Bluff, and just kind of took off obviously from there. I was super slow when I started for a long time, a very long time. And just slowly got into it, and just moved up through the ranks. Obviously, beginner box to box stock to 250, and then opens. And I think I'd run one season in opens, and Jimmy Elledge called me to race the QRC kart, and it just kind of just spirals from there. But that first ride with Jimmy when I was 13, or I think I was 14 when he called me. I was sitting at high school waiting to get picked up because I couldn't drive, obviously, and I get a call from Jimmy, and got my first ride there, standing outside of my high school, getting ready to get picked up and go home. So then it kind of just takes off from there. Every little opportunity from there, that I go to Placerville weekly races and race lightning sprints at first, and then wing cars, and then you get a midget opportunity, and it just all kind of spirals.
A lot of things I want to circle back there. I find it hard to believe you're one of the slow box stock kids. I mean, you circle back to the Outlaw Kart ranks every now and then. We have a couple kids that just are struggling to get up to speed. I find it hard to believe you were one of those kids at one point. So what was the breaking point for you where you go from slow kid at the back and the B main being a front runner?
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, when you're that young, you're just kind of having fun with your friends, and then you get in your race car and you go drive it in circles, and then you get out and go hang out with your buddies again in the pits. That's kind of, in reality, that's really what it is when you're that old. You're just going to the races and to hang out with your friends, and you happen to race a few times while you're there. But I think that's more when it does change, right? When you want to go there to race and not hang out with your buddies, that's kind of when the switch flips. And you can you see it a lot. Obviously, you've been around it, and now it's especially the younger classes. It kind of clicks all at once, and then all of a sudden these kids are fast, and they're kind of figuring it out, and they're learning, and they're into it. But when they're not into it or whatever, they're just running around there. But it does seem to click with a lot of kids, at least. Maybe not all of them, but there does seem to be a turning point at some point where they go from just kind of cruising around, and then next thing you know, they're racing up front and, contending at least.
And you talked about Jimmy Elledge, of course, the owner of Factory QRC out in Red Bluff. I love that he called you while you were waiting to get picked up from high school. And you said that was really your first big break. And at that point in time for you, what did that truly mean? Because we're talking about, for race fans that don't know much about Outlaw Kart racing, that is like getting a Hendrick Motorsports ride or a Keith Kunz ride. It's a big deal for young drivers. So what do you remember about driving for Jimmy the first couple of times?
There's lots of stories of racing with Jimmy, but
I'm sure there is.
Yeah, there is. But like I said, he called me when I was in line at high school to get I think my brother was coming to pick me up or whatever. But I was 14 or 15 and had done nothing obviously but race with my family. So to go race with somebody different and different cars and different engines and all of his stuff was a change. Obviously, like you said, it's if it were a major ride, it'd be the KK ride, or it'd be a top tier ride. And so I get in with that, and man, it's just obviously the best of the best. And just like I said, the biggest change is just getting away from your family a little bit and kind of doing it on your own. It kind of, isn't professional racing, but it kind of simulates, having a ride in the real world and getting paid and stuff like that. So it's definitely different. But I think one of the first, if it wasn't the first night, it was like the second or the third. We were in the trophy dash, and like the tire fell off of it, and my mom come down there yelling at Jimmy, and basically had to like tell my mom like to leave, like, you got to get out of here. You can't do this stuff. This is, this isn't how it's going to go. And basically since that day, it's all obviously been fine, and everybody got along and whatnot. But yeah, there was a moment where I kind of had to separate it a little bit. But other than that, like I said, that was literally like the first night, I think. The tire fell off of the thing, and nothing bad happened, obviously, but there was almost a big blowout.
So, Logan, you grew up in an area that was mostly populated by wing sprint cars. Obviously, the Outlaw Karts race with wings. And I think if you ask a lot of kids at Cycling and Red Bluff, their goal is to become a wing sprint car driver one day. So did you always want to go the wing sprint car route, or did you always want to go down the USAC route, or did you have a plan, period?
Yeah, no, I didn't really, I didn't have much of a plan. So I was just racing Outlaw Karts, just what we did growing up. It's just what, my brother, my family did. And I didn't know, when I was young, I didn't even know sprint cars were a thing. I didn't know you could race for a living. I didn't know any of it. I didn't know, like I said, I didn't know what sprint cars were. I didn't know what USAC was. I didn't know what the World of Outlaws was until I went to my first Gold Cup or stuff like that, and then I kind of realized, like, man, this is real and this is serious and whatnot. But yeah, I didn't have a plan to do it. I didn't know how to do it. Nobody in my family raced or anything like that. So after high school, like I said, I was racing, but after high school, I went off to college and, not off. I went to Chico, but went to Chico for engineering, mechanical engineering, and was doing that, and it was all going good. I was still racing. I was racing sprint cars actually at the time. Dave Robinson kind of got me into, introduced me to Dan Monoff, who's an owner out there in California, who introduced me to John Taylor, who kind of took me lightning sprint racing and then got a sprint car for me to race a little bit for a year and a half. I think we raced 2 years of sprint cars with him. They're just Placerville locally and a few other races. I think it was Civil War at the time, but a few other races around there. But yeah, I didn't really, like I said, I didn't know anybody. I didn't know how to get rides. I didn't know how it all worked at all. And I was just going to college, and that was it. It's no big deal. Going to school to be a mechanical engineer. And then in 2017, I had heart surgery, which set me back a while, which was actually, I had just got my first midget ride, and I figured out I needed heart surgery. And that kind of put that on hold for a while. Did my heart surgery in 2017, showed back up to the Chili Bowl. I'm backwards, sorry. 2016 heart surgery, showed back up to the Chili Bowl, and they ran my first Chili Bowl that next year in 2017, and then did the Power Ride midget stuff with that same team. So, yeah, like I said, I didn't really have any plans. That's kind of how racing goes. Some guys have a plan and everything goes perfectly, or they have a plan and it doesn't work out at all. And you never really know, right? You never know. Tomorrow you can get a phone call that changes everything. So, yeah, I don't know. I didn't like sprint cars were not my goal because I didn't know they existed for a long time.
That's fair. How can something be your goal if you don't know it exists? But
right.
You mentioned that midget ride after your heart surgery kind of put that on hold. Was that your first chance to come out back in the Midwest and race in that midget, or did you have a sprint car ride or something? Or what was kind of the circumstances of you getting your first ride out here in the Midwest?
Yeah, I didn't have any rides. So I showed up to the Chili Bowl. I think my brother Tyler was racing the Chili Bowl in 2016, and I showed up there. And there was one morning I got up and I had like 4 missed calls from Chris Bell and like 3 missed calls from Aaron Reitzel. And there was a car, which was Aaron's at the time, but they wouldn't let him race, or there was some sort of scenario where they wouldn't let him race. And I got to hot lap the car and it went well. And that's kind of how I got introduced to Jeff Taylor with Rockwell Security and Rick Young with Rams Racing. And like I said, I think I did like 5 or 6 laps, and that was enough for them to run me at Port City that year, a 2-day show. with Power Eye. I ran 2 races with them then, and like 2 weeks later, I think, is when I realized I needed heart surgery and put the racing on hold for a while, at least in midget racing. I still did Outlaw Karts and sprint cars in California, but so Port City was my first real Midwest race with Power Eye, and it actually went kind of decently. I didn't look like a complete fool, and then they brought me back for the whole next year for 2017. I ran the whole Power Eye schedule.
And that brings me to my next point. That had to have been just I don't know what the word is to describe it, unfathomable season for a young guy like you at the time. You come out, not only do you pick up Rookie of the Year, you rattle off a couple wins. I believe your first Power Eye win, you passed Michael Pickens, the great New Zealand midget driver, for the win. And you collect the championship too, all in the same year. So just tell me what you remember about that year and that magical championship run in your first year of midget racing.
Yeah, I remember I crashed Michael Pickens. I didn't really pass him. I was just a young kid being dumb, but I had ran him down late. He was like the guy that year too. That was when I think he was won a few USAC races, and he'd come out with C-Mount, and they were really good. And I'd run him down at Lincoln, and I don't know. Like I said, I'd never won before. I threw a slider that was way too far back, and I crashed him, and they were all mad. And obviously they should have been mad because I crashed them. And it wasn't my best moment, but then we won again at Macon that year. That was a good race for us. So I beat a lot of good cars that year. I actually flipped leading at Belle Claire. I remember that one pretty vividly. I remember like beating all of Keith's cars that day. It was pretty late in the race. Cushion was big, got to lap traffic, and lost focus or looked away or tried to look at another lap car. Whatever happened, I lost focus and hit the cushion too hard and turned right over. So that one was tough to swallow because the other two obviously were good races, but I had never beat Keith's cars that year, and I was there beating him and then flipped over leading. So that was a tough one, but that's also when I kind of secured not that race, but that year. There was a race where I was parked next to Keith, and I'd kind of heard that they were needing a guy for the next year, and didn't think that I was the guy at all. But I walked into their trailer, and just basically told Pete and Keith that I was their guy if they needed somebody, and that was it, right? I just said, obviously, if you need somebody, call me. If not, no big deal. But you can get a hold of me, through Christopher or whatever. And that was basically all that was said. They said, okay, and kind of smiled, and I left. And like a week later, I think Pete called me. It was later in the year, obviously, a few weeks, I think, before we went out west. But like a week later, Pete called me, and we were signed up to do the Chili Bowl and then the full season the next year. So kind of just another one of them things you never really know. And kind of got a lot of push and a lot of help from like Chris Bell and Larson, even, who were kind of in their ears helping me out a little bit. But just kind of a wild card, just literally walked into their trailer and told them to run me next year. And they did, obviously for 2 years there. So that was kind of a turning point also. Like I said, every little thing is, adds up, but that was a big moment for me.
Absolutely. And I find it fascinating. You were the one that approached, not Keith and Toyota. But let's talk about 2018 too. You're coming off a Power Eye Rookie of the Year and a title and a couple of wins. You then start to run the full USAC slate, and you do the same thing. You replicate it with another couple of wins. And were you kind of pinching yourself in that moment that you had just come out of California, kind of relative unknown wild card? You pick off all these wins, and now you're driving for Keith Kunz. Oh, and you're a USAC champion too.
Yeah. Like I said, it just all happens so fast. Looking back, you don't even understand how fast it happens. Like I said, I was, just 1 year I'm sitting in the hospital, and the next year, it's like you're full-time racing midgets. And then the next year was Keith, and then USAC and Power Eye, which is double the races. And then, I'm making decent money racing now. And then, things change. And 18 is when I moved to Indiana. So on my own for the first time. Lots of stuff changes, obviously, but it started right from the beginning. I think my first USAC race ever was with in 2017 at the Turkey Night Grand Prix. And then my second USAC race was DuQuoin, and I won. And it was just like unbelievable, right? All the stars aligned. I think I was on the pole because like Sunshine and Justin Grant crashed with each other teammates and happened to land me on the pole, and then it took rubber. It's just like I said, all the stars aligned for me to even win. It's not like we weren't fast, but that's just a race, obviously, that things got to happen the right way, and they did. And like I said, it was my first race with Keith outside of Chili Bowl. Made the Chili Bowl our first try with Keith, obviously, and then won DuQuoin. I think we won Sweet Springs and Bakersfield, I believe, that first year in 2018. So like I said, we didn't light the world on fire, but we were really fast, like all the time. I didn't win a bunch, but we were really good. And that's when, Clausen had 2 or 3 good cars, and Boat had a couple good cars. Chad was still racing. Like I said, USAC midget racing's always been tough, and it was still tough then. But like I said, I was going to all these tracks for the first time. Like every track I went to that year was my first time there, and that's fun for me. But I definitely didn't expect to, but I didn't expect to win the championship. But obviously, by about 5 or 6 races in, I knew we were contenders.
One of the advantages I see a lot with the Keith Kunz Motorsports drivers of today is they have a lot of resources to work with. And you talked about how a lot of the Toyota people helped you get better with hydrating. So what was the most important thing you learned while you were at Keith Kunz Motorsports with all those resources around you?
I'd say probably, like, for me personally, the hydration is the biggest part for me. I wish I took it more seriously, as serious then as I do now. Not that I didn't take it seriously, but for whatever reason, I don't know. I take it a lot more seriously now than I probably should have then also. But I think I'm just more self-aware of what I need and where I lack and stuff like that. I think it's just part of growing up a little bit and understanding, where you're at in life and where you are as a, racer or whatever in your career, whatever it is. You kind of learn as you go. And I think I learned that, there were some races where I got out of the car, and regardless of if it affected me while I was racing, like I just felt awful when I got out, or felt awful the next day, or for a few hours later. It's just like I just feel like I do a lot better, feel better, and that's worth it for me to keep myself hydrated and stuff like that. But as far as like dirt racing goes, there's only so much you can prepare yourself for, right? You can only watch so many videos. You can only do so much, as far as like you want to go Toyota racing and stock car stuff, you can get on their sim and do all that stuff. But for dirt racing, it's kind of you're on your own, and you kind of out, they kind of feed you to the wolves. But as far as the Toyota resources go, like it's huge, right? If you feel like you got a problem, like, man, you call these guys, or you're not feeling good, they'll send you to the doctor, or you're not, or if you need to work out more, you can go to their gym basically whenever the heck you want. That's something I probably should have taken advantage of more too. I feel like the last 2 years I've been taking my physical fitness very seriously, and I feel better than ever. And like I said, had that same opportunity 5 years ago, and I did it here and there, but nowhere near as hardcore as I do now. So their program is great, and I wish I don't know if it would have changed anything for me in the long run, but I do wish I would have at least started taking it seriously a little earlier.
Well, like you said, it's part of growing up. And speaking of Toyota, you mentioned the Toyota stock car stuff. You got introduced to that. You ran some ARCA races, even won at DuQuoin. You got to run a truck at Eldora. First off, how fun was that? Because it looks like it's a lot of fun to run those cars on the dirt. And second, after all those opportunities, did you ever think about maybe pursuing something in ARCA or NASCAR?
Well, first off, like you said, they're a blast to drive on dirt. I think they're fun because they're not made to go drive on dirt. So they don't drive good at all. And you kind of have to be on top of it. And I think that's why you see a lot of dirt guys run obviously really well when they do, just because the cars don't drive good. And sometimes on dirt, your stuff just doesn't drive good, and you got to figure it out. But, the pavement stuff, you got all day of practice and stuff like that to make your car drive good. And they're just so used to cars that drive really nice or have a bunch of grip and stuff like that. So you take the grip away from those things and it makes them tough. But the truck race is probably one of the cooler experiences of my whole life. Just to do that, to race on national TV and have all my friends and family either there or watching at home. And, I got pictures and videos of like watch parties and stuff like that. And so to have that many people watching was, first of all, obviously really cool. And then to like lead half of the race or whatever I led, 50 or 60 laps, that was even cooler. So, I would have loved to have done more of it. But it just didn't work out. I think I was supposed to run in 2019, but it interfered with one of the USAC races I had going on. So I couldn't go, and that was a bummer for me because I really would have liked to try again because I obviously feel like I could have won and had a good shot too. But outside of further opportunities, I really haven't had much lately, or even as much look hard for it, just because I know how that side of the sport works, and it's just tough. And then obviously my schedule is 100 races or whatever I race. You don't really have time to do other stuff. To do a truck race, you need 2 or 3 days, and I don't have 2 or 3 days usually, or Fridays or Saturday, Thursdays and Fridays or whatever they do. I just don't really have those days to do it. Because you got to basically, if you're racing, I've been racing USAC points, so you basically have to give away your whole season to do something like that. But I'm not against it. Obviously, I would love to, especially do the dirt races. I don't want to say I don't have interest, but I don't have as much interest to do the pavement stuff just because it's not what I do, obviously. And I know I'll probably never do it full time, so I don't really care I don't say don't care or don't whatever, but I just have other stuff that I do, and it's just part of life, right?
Absolutely. And speaking of pavement racing, that's another thing I wanted to hit on with you today. When you first came into the Silver Crown Series as a full-time driver, everybody knew you were going to be great on the dirt. We didn't really know what to expect from you on the pavement. And at first, you and Robbie Rice struggled to find what you really liked. But this year, things have really seemed to turn the corner. You were on the front row at Winchester. Obviously, things didn't work out. So has pavement racing been the hardest part of driving to learn for you over the course of your career?
Yeah, probably. Especially, honestly, pavement open wheel cars are like something I never wanted to do, honestly. They just always seemed so sketchy and twitchy and out of control. And they kind of are a little bit, but the more I obviously do it, the more fun I have and the more I enjoy it and the better I get. But the pavement side of things is a big combination of everything, right? You're just like anything on pavement, your car's got to be really, really good. You have to be really good, and you don't get a whole lot of time to figure it out. And then you're racing against guys that are specialists in what they do on the pavement and open wheel cars, right? You're racing against Cody and Bobby and all these guys that are, Rorig and all these guys that are unbelievable. And, you get a little bit of practice and then you go qualify and then you got to go race with them. So it's just tough. And part of it, obviously, in the beginning was I wasn't good. Our car was a little bit off. Just everything working against us. And now Ronnie's getting more confident. I'm getting more confident. I feel like, Winchester hurts because I really feel like I had a chance to win that race. And especially when I took off and got to the lead, obviously I didn't even lead a lap, but going into one, I was leading and went in there and had no brakes and Cody went flying by me. And then I knew I was pretty much in trouble from then. But that's a race I feel like if I said, obviously it's easy to look back at now and say, woulda, coulda, shoulda, or whatever. But if I could have just gotten off of 2 in front of Cody and, then the cards are in different hands. So, like I said, obviously it's easy to say now, but who knows, he could have went blowing by me the first lap also with brakes. So who really knows? But outside of that, the pavement stuff is fun. Honestly, I really do finally enjoy going to the pavement races. Finally, the first year and a half, I was just going to finish the race and, move on to the next one. But now we're having fun and we're racing well and we're cars fast. We're qualifying pretty decently. And like I said, we're having fun doing it now. And we feel like we have a shot when we go. And that's obviously important.
And one thing you've always been good at in Silver Crowns is the half mile and mile dirt tracks. Obviously, just picking up a win at Springfield. You've won at Port Royal already this year. What is it about you and dirt Silver Crown cars that just seem to go hand in hand? Because it doesn't matter what dirt track we go to now, you have a very good chance of winning.
Yeah, I think it's just the long races. Having to save your car a little bit, honestly, anymore. I obviously didn't do it in the past ever, but I feel like everyone says anymore, it really is more of a sprint race. And as much as we want to say we're saving, we're really not saving that much. You have to run pretty hard to stay out front or, to keep up. But those first two races I ran in 2020, I think, kind of gave me a false sense of what was going on, because we ran Selinsgrove for my first race and it killed tires. I think I was running like fourth or fifth on the last lap and blew a tire, but that was a race. I think almost every car in the field popped a tire at some point, and Cottle changed the tire and won or whatever. So I was like, shoot, like this is serious. We really got to save. And then I go to the Indy Mile and it's lockdown rubber and everyone comes in with bald tire. I don't think anybody blew a tire, but everyone came in with bald tires. And I was like, man, this is hardcore, because I felt like we were saving for 60, 70, 80 laps and our tires are bald. Like this is tough. These guys are good. And then ever since that day, like I come in and my tires look like brand new. And I'm like, man, I'm just saving too much. Early in the race, these guys go blowing past me. That was my struggle in 2021, was I would be saving and these guys would blow past me. And in my head, I'm like, okay, they're going to blow a tire or I'm going to get them back later. And I just wouldn't get them back. They'd be fine. Right. Like, dang, I wasn't as good as I thought it was. So that was kind of a struggle. And then last year I got a little bit better at managing the race and not giving up so much in the beginning. And both pavement and dirt, I would give up like 5, 6, 7 spots in the first like lap or two. And it wasn't good. I could get back a few late in the race, but I always thought I was outsmarting them, and I wasn't. I was just couldn't figure it out. And then last year, at the end of last year, it kind of found a middle ground where I don't know. I think my driving style just fits it. I think even when I think I'm running hard, I'm probably running a little bit easier than most guys. And then if I'm pushing really hard, then I'm probably running pretty hard. But like I said, even at Springfield, I feel like I ran like above average pace for like 70 laps and my tire was completely fine. So, I don't know. Like I said, I feel like some of it maybe is a little exaggerated because we are running probably harder than most guys think, but that might be in my head too. Like I said, just because I feel like my natural driving style is just a little bit calmer or, a little bit tamer than most, I would say. And it kind of naturally saves tires and naturally saves fuel. So, it just seems to fit my style. Like I said, all together, the whole driving style works for me. You run the cars really straight. You got to keep the tires under them. Late in the race, you do start spinning tires late, but it's more because of fuel burn off. It's really not exactly just because you wear your tires out. It's honestly a lot of burning your fuel off. And if you can keep a little bit of fuel in the tank at the end, you can get a little more drive down the straightaways.
Very, very interesting to be sure. And as you said, there's a lot that goes into Silver Crown racing. And at the top of the show, you said the only day in your life that could contend for one of the greatest days ever, if not the greatest day, was your Chili Bowl victory. And let's go to that now. Coming into Chili Bowl, your last midget win was at Turkey Night in 2021. And like I said, we're going to Chili Bowl 2023. I feel like for a lot of people that would knock their confidence. So did you feel like you could pull off a big win like that or even just run good after not winning for so long in the midget?
Yeah, it's a tough mental game, right? Any day in racing is a mental game as much as it is physical, but it's hard really. Once you talk to any guy, like once you get down or you can just see the results, right? Once you get down, it's tough to dig out of it. And yeah, the 2022 midget racing was not a good year for me. Obviously, like I said, we ended the year out west, like lights out, unbelievably fast. And then we could not get going at all in 2022. I don't think, I don't even know if I got like more than 2 top 5s. Like maybe you'd have to go check the stats, but it was bad. It was really bad. And it's tough. Yeah. You lose your ride and whatnot. And you really don't know what's what's in store. And then we kind of went out west with Abacus, and I was at least competing. I know we didn't win or didn't like run really good, didn't get a podium or anything, but we were at least competing and qualifying back to, decently. And then, I think it was June, July or whatever, maybe even a little bit later than that. I texted Kevin. I was like, Swindell. And I was like, man, what are you doing for Chili Bowl? I'd raced with them 3 or 4 times already, but I didn't know, like, maybe he'd find somebody better that's running better or whatnot. And, he said, hey, it's yours if you want it. So obviously I wasn't going to turn it down, and built his own car. And just having people believe in you obviously is important. And he believed in me. And we went there and obviously did what we did. And that was, huge. I feel like for whatever reason, you go to that building and you get in the car, and I always say, I think it's the tires and the wheels and just the whole aspect, the different rule package. The cars are a little lighter. So you always feel like awesome on practice day. Like everyone says they feel awesome on practice day. And that's just how it is. And then you go in there and you feel good and kind of bump your confidence back up. And we just worked on the thing all week and got it better. And we were obviously, the results speak for themselves, but it's huge confidence booster. You have to get your confidence back up, and Kevin was able to do that for me and get me pumped back up. And then, after you get your, heat race win or whatever, then it all turns back around and you're on top of the world. So racing is this is how it goes.
Kevin Swindell talked a lot during this year's Chili Bowl, whether it was in interviews with, Swindell Speed Lab or whether it was Flo with anybody. He would talk about how this is a brand new car and we don't have really a notebook for anything. And you've had to drive brand new race cars over the course of your career, and you've had to learn how to adjust and adapt and all that. But how hard is it when you're doing that along with the crew chief?
Yeah, exactly. All right. That's even the bigger obstacle. And, we had a lot of obstacles, honestly. Obviously, from the outside looking in, it probably doesn't look like it, but I think I don't even know what day of the week I'm even talking about, but I think we were supposed to go to Port City and test. They always do like a little test or whatever, like Friday or Saturday before the Chili Bowl. And we were supposed to go there and test. And I went there one day, like I think it was like Wednesday or Thursday. We're just going to go start the car, right? No big deal. Throw my seat in, go to start the car, and we go to push it out of the shop. And I'm like, there's no brakes on this thing. There's 0 brakes. So we sit there all night trying to get the brakes to work. And for whatever reason, brake issues are like the worst thing in racing. Like if you have a brake problem, it sucks to like figure it out. And they just work. Sometimes it just takes a long time to get it sorted out. And we worked on the brakes like all night and couldn't figure it out. I think we finally got brakes on it that night, but it was dark. So couldn't start the car. Come back the next morning to start the car. Can't get the car started, like all day, can't get this car started. And I think like same thing, like late in the day, we got the car started up. So we missed practice day. Like that was our little test day at Port. Didn't even go to that. So our first time the car like actually fired around the racetrack and ran was practice day for the Chili Bowl. But and even then, like our first few laps of practice, we were just like okay at best. And we changed a lot of stuff before Tuesday our Race of Champions was, and we were like really fast for that. So obviously we changed the right things, and that got, Kevin obviously feels like he knows what he's doing, and feels like he knows what he's doing, but you don't really know until you see it on the racetrack and see it make speed with, obviously other good cars. So I think after the Race of Champions, we were all pretty pumped up and kind of knew that we had a legit shot. You obviously always go to that building if you're, myself or Kevin or whoever it might be. If you're a contender, you feel like you're going to go there and win, and that's always in first thing on your head, right? So first thing in your mind, that's what you go there for, is to win. And after that, I think it finally was like real, like, okay, we can do this. And, we always talk about it when we get there, like we're going to win this year, and everyone does, right? That's what you do when you go there. And but yeah, to make it real and to actually be, one of the best cars all week was unreal.
So you go to the Race of Champions, everything's going good, and then you go to your prelim feature, you win your heat race, you win your qualifier. And one thing I love to hear drivers talk about, and I want your opinion on this, is how do you balance out your aggression and patience when it comes to running those heat races and qualifiers? Because ultimately, those are really the two races that can decide the fate of your week.
Yeah, it's Chili Bowl is the hardest because all year we race and you know who you're racing with and you know who you're racing around and you kind of know you almost know what's going to happen before it happens. And then you go to the Chili Bowl and you don't know who you're lined up with. You don't know who's in front of you. You don't know you see their names, but you don't know who they are. All year there's like 60 midgets that race throughout the country. And then you go to the Chili Bowl and there's 300. It's like, you don't know 250 of these people. And that's the hardest part, is just trying to figure out who's around you, if they're going to go down the straightaway in a straight line or not. So that is like one of the hardest parts, is that first heat race. Like, it either makes or breaks your entire week. And in 2022, I spun out in my heat race and didn't even make my prelim feature. So extra pressure going into 2023, like, don't screw this up. And, it obviously all went well. But, yeah, that is the hardest part, is getting through that first heat. And I know everyone says it, and it's, just like cliche, but it really, really is. Like, there's the nerves pushing down the ramp for your heat race are, like second to none. Like, the only thing higher was probably the first time that I started on the pole at Chili Bowl, and that was nuts. But this year I was on the pole and I was like totally calm. And I think that's says a lot to, about like how good I felt about my car, and just obviously being older and more years in racing. I think I was on the pole in 2019, and I don't say I knew I wasn't going to win, but I knew it was a long shot at that point. And I just come off a USAC championship. And even after that, I was just like, this is going to be tough. Right. And then in this year, obviously I still knew it was going to be tough, but I just felt so much better about just the race in general and my car and whatnot. So the Chili Bowl is a roller coaster of all sorts of emotions and confidence up and down. And it's just like such a tough race. Obviously everyone, like I said, it's cliche to even say that, but it really is one of the toughest races mentally. And, just all around running the race is just tough.
So you talk about starting on the pole of the biggest race of the year and all the confidence you had. So you get out front early, and Chili Bowl always in the feature, it goes through so many changes. Are you keeping your eye out front for any certain change in the racetrack, or are you just going wherever you can keep people behind you?
I mean, like I said, obviously you kind of know what you're getting there, right? You've seen the same thing for, 7-8 years since they've kind of started doing the full rework. And you always start with 10, 15, 20 laps on the bottom, and then it kind of just moves up the track, right? And we didn't quite get that this year. I mean, pretty similar, but not quite the full rundown. But I don't know. I think we only ran the bottom for like 8 or 10 laps, and then it was like right up to lane 2, like just one lane around the outside. And then 1 and 2, I never even left that. I ran like right through that middle lane, like almost all 55 laps. I went to the top, I think, once or twice, and it wasn't good. The cushion was huge in 1 and 2, like almost impossible to run with a midget. Honestly, it was so big. And for whatever reason, the last 2 years, I feel like there's been like extra banking in the middle. Like in 2022, Tanner ran like right through the middle, like slider line, like all sorts of weird stuff that you don't normally see at the Chili Bowl. Normally it's like on the berm or on the top. And the last 2 years, we've seen guys be able to run through the middle. And I think the banking's just been a little off. And every time we go there, everyone says the banking's different, the berm's different, everything. Everyone talks about it being different. But I do feel like the last 2 years there's been like an odd amount of banking in the middle of the racetrack. And that's why we've been running through the middle. But yeah, just managing the Chili Bowl race is tough in itself, because there's, the toughest field of the year, obviously. And anybody can go by you at any point. And you're running hard for 55 laps. And the biggest thing with the Chili Bowl, obviously everyone talks about it, but you got the screen, and they moved it this year. And I kind of joked, like, I think they made it better. They made it bigger, and they made it in the corner now. So you go into, like, you used to peek at it off of 4, and then by the time you turned into 1, you kind of had to look away. But now you could still look at it off of 4, and then you could see it all the way through the corner. Like, you can come off 2 and kind of look to the right, and you can still see what's happening. So I think they made it better. I think, obviously, it always helps the leader there, a part of how the races go at the Chili Bowl. But, yeah, I mean, I could see everything. I could see, I watched the whole race on the screen while I was racing, it's like, you can see it all. I mean, I feel like as a fan, it does suck, but when you're leading, it's the best thing in the world. You have a spotter basically. So, but yeah, I mean, you go into turn, like I said, you used to be able to peek off of 4, and you can kind of see where the guy was running in 3 and 4, and that was it. And now you can see where they're at off of 4, and then you can also see where they're at going into 1. So, yeah, it helps a lot. But early Cannon, I think, found the middle a little bit better than I did. I moved up, but he was just running it better than I was, and he was able to go by me. And not always the worst thing. Obviously, at the Chili Bowl, it's a little worse when the guy has a screen, because then they're doing the same thing to you. You find a line and they go by you, or they can block you. So, I was obviously able to go back by Cannon on one of the restarts. That's kind of when I felt really good about my car, and I could run like through the middle of 1 and 2, and then I run against the cushion in 3 and 4 and be good, and I felt average. The problem was the cushion was big in 3 and 4, so you couldn't get your car too tight. And then 1 and 2 was so slick that you needed to be tight, but I would have given up too much in 3 and 4. So I was just, maintaining bottom 1 and 2, top 3 and 4, bottom 1 and 2, top 3 and 4. And I seen Tanner for 5, 6, 7 laps. And I knew eventually that it was going to rubber. Yeah, so I knew it was going to rubber at some point. I didn't really know when. But I had my car still, like, really loose, like probably looser even than where I pushed off at. And just because, like I said, I was running the cushion really hard, and I was wheeling and doing all sorts of stuff, so I couldn't really get myself any tighter to go through 1 to 2 that good. So I'd give up a little bit there, but I could gain off of 4. And like I said, 4, 5, 6 laps in a row, I'd seen Tanner's nose. And it's like every time I seen him, I would see a little bit more of it. And then I'd see a little bit more of it. But I could see the screen off of 4 and know that I was like gapping him into 1. So I knew I was gaining a little bit into 1 or off of 4. But I must have been losing a lot off of 2 and down the backstretch, because he was getting close to me off of 4. But I knew I had a huge lead by the time I got into 1. So I was just maintaining that, and eventually I knew I needed to get down. So I kind of got off of too low and assumed there was rubber, and I like ripped down into the bottom, and there wasn't rubber, and I like nearly gave up the lead. We were side by side, and if there was an onboard on the car, I think there was, but you could hear both of our engines just on the chip off of 2 or off of 4, because we were side by side for the lead of the Chili Bowl, and that was like obviously the closest moment that I got to losing the race, and then after that, I knew if I just kept her down on the berm that we were fairly safe. And still at that point, you don't know if you have tires left, because it had been really black slick the whole race. So you don't know if you have tires left. So I didn't want to get my car too tight either, because you're just putting more weight on your right rear tire, and then you wear your tire out quicker. Or if the rubber does come in pretty strong, you don't want to get tight in it. So you also don't want to get too tight there. But obviously, I feel like I could have made my car a little bit better from inside, but like I said, there's consequences to pay if you get too tight, especially if you're leading. Obviously, if you're second, you can get a little more aggressive. But probably erred a little bit on the side of caution, and it worked out, obviously, but I feel like I could have got my car a little better than where I had it.
So Tanner Thorson is beating down your back bumper. I'll give it to Tanner. I think you and him had a good conversation post-race about how fun and clean that race was, even through the rubber. But what is that like? Let's let's rewind back again to 2021. You hadn't won a midget race since then, albeit you won your prelim night, but you're also trying to get the biggest midget win in not only your career, but the world. So what are those nerves like the last couple laps when you know you have to stay right on the berm and keep Tanner Thorson right behind you too?
Yeah. It's, that's when it gets nerve wracking, right? Like 10, 15 to go. Like right before you have to change lines is like the most nerve wracking part. As soon as you change lines, you're nervous for about a lap and then you feel pretty good about what you're doing. But yeah, like 10, 15 to go, I was struggling and like, man, at this point you can't give up the lead, obviously, because you don't have time to get it back. And that was, I feel like I said, at the time I didn't know what I was doing or if I was making the right decisions, but looking back, I feel like I did make the right decisions at the right time to win, obviously. But yeah, it's tough. I've been racing with Tanner for my literally like entire life since I was probably 6 or 7, I think is probably when I started racing against Tanner. And we've just always grown up racing the same stuff, the same classes forever. So I've, like I said, I don't know, now it's probably almost 20 years I've been racing with them. So there's not many people in the world that I've raced with more than I've raced with Tanner. And yeah, I was pretty confident that obviously I didn't think he was going to crash me. He laid them upper to me a few times, which I expect. And, it's a Chili Bowl. You should do everything you can in your power. And he was trying. And, in the moment, his car was better and he had his car better. Like I said, you can always get more aggressive in second because you don't really have anything to lose, especially obviously at that race. And there was a lot of moments where I almost gave it up to him. And but yeah, we obviously were able to hang on and to win. But it's tough, yeah. When even right now, like Tanner's the biggest competition in midget racing we have right now, and he's as good as it gets. And yeah, to beat him at the Chili Bowl was cool, and beat him a few times now this year. It's tough. It's always tough to beat Tanner, and he's confident and got his own stuff where he wants it, and that's kind of always been what he's needed, and he's got everything he needs now. So yeah, he's about as tough as he's ever been.
I'd agree with that 100%. So it is August 23rd. They were recording this. We'll call it 7 months since the Chili Bowl. Have you gotten to think about how important that win is and how meaningful it is, or have you just been racing too much to really think about it a whole lot?
No, I think I think about it more than I probably thought I would, honestly. Like I come home and I see the driller and it's like, man, that's pretty cool, right? It's like, I think it'll be even cooler once I go to the building and your name's on the banner and the t-shirt and all that stuff, and every race I go to, like every single race I go to, someone's like, hey, good job at the Chili Bowl. I'm like, dude, that was 8 months ago. Like, like I get it was the first time I seen you and whatnot, but like, it kind of blows my mind that that's the first thing people think about when they see me, right? It's like, they don't think about me riding the wall anymore. That used to be what I used to do. So, because now at least it's something, that I want at least. But
well, you won ESPN Sports Center top 10 or whatever. I think
I was Sports Center top 10 for the wall ride. I think it was like 6th or 7th at one point, and then it slowly fell down the list. But yeah, that was cool also. But obviously, there's probably only, I don't even know what could top the Chili Bowl at this point. It'd be a while since I'm in any shape to win a bigger race than that. So yeah, that's pretty wild. Like I said, every time I go to a race, like every single race, I don't know how many races I've ran this year, but every single race somebody says something about the Chili Bowl. And then every time you come home, you got the trophy and whatnot. And yeah, I think it's set in for sure. And it's not any less cool now than it was, 8 months ago. So I don't think it's ever going to go away.
Absolutely. Well, Logan, thanks for your time. And I guess I'll see you at SmackDown and probably a couple nights of Frolic this week.
That sounds good to me.
Awesome. Thank you. Once again, wanted to thank our guest Logan Seavey for giving some of his time today to NonWing Worldwide as we gear up for a busy weekend across the country when it comes to NonWing sprint car and midget racing. Before we get into our schedule, don't forget to check out nonwing.com. Of course, there's a lot of good stuff on there. Of course, you can find the NonWing Worldwide podcast on there. Also, we have our store open where you can get NonWing Worldwide stickers. Our schedule, like I said, that we're going to talk about here in a second, that is all on NonWing Worldwide, or I should say nonwing.com. And we're still adding to it. A lot of the big stuff is on there too, a lot of local tracks. And we just started adding some of the Australian schedules. I know for a fact Eastern Creek and High-Tech's Oil Toowoomba Speedway is on there too with all their non-wing sprint car and midget racing for this upcoming season. As we get into our schedule for this week, and it is a busy one, starting off on Thursday night at the Kokomo Speedway for the first night of the Elliott's Custom Trailers and Karts Sprint Car Smackdown in Kokomo, Indiana for the AMSOIL USAC National Sprint Car Series. Also going on Thursday night at the Davenport Speedway in Davenport, Iowa is the Extreme Outlaw Midgets and the Power Ride National Midgets going head-to-head. Friday night, August 25th, we'll see a lot more racing in action. Night number 2 of the Elliott's Custom Trailers and Karts Sprint Car Smackdown at the Kokomo Speedway in Kokomo, Indiana. And for the second night in a row, the Davenport Speedway in Davenport, Iowa will be in action with the Extreme Outlaw Midgets and the Power Ride National Midgets. Boulevard Speedway in Bolivar, Missouri has Power Ride War Sprints. Lincoln Speedway in Lincoln, Illinois has the Badger Mara Midgets. Circle City Raceway in Indianapolis, Indiana has the USSA Midgets along with non-wing steel block 410 sprint cars. And the Bloomington Speedway in Bloomington, Indiana will have their weekly Friday night show with non-wing 410 sprint cars. Saturday night is championship night at the Kokomo Speedway for the Elliott's Custom Trailers and Karts Sprint Car Smackdown in Kokomo, Indiana for the AMSOIL USAC National Sprint Car Series. Also championship night at Davenport Speedway in Davenport, Iowa for the Extreme Outlaw Midgets and the Power Ride National Midgets. Valley Speedway in Green Valley, Missouri has the Power Ride War Sprints for the King of Kansas City. On to Santa Maria Speedway out in Nimpomo, California for the USAC West Coast Sprint Cars and the USAC Western States Midgets. Vado Speedway Park in Vado, New Mexico has the New Mexico Motor Racing Association Sprint Cars along with the Power Ride 360 non-wing sprint cars. Port City Raceway in Tulsa, Oklahoma has the Power Ride West Midgets. Antioch Speedway in Antioch, California is the BCR Midgets for the second Triple Crown race of the season. Montpelier Motor Speedway in Montpelier, Indiana is the USAC Midwest Thunder Speed 2 Midgets. Spoon River Speedway in Canton, Illinois has the Power Ride IMRA Speed 2 Midgets. Wilmot Raceway in Wilmot, Wisconsin has the Badger Speed 2 Midgets. Dominion Raceway in Spotsylvania, Virginia has the USAC Eastern Focus Midgets. Stockton Dirt Track in Stockton, California has the Hunt Wingless Tour. Paragon Speedway in Paragon, Indiana has the All-Star Circuit of Champions TQ Midgets along with their local non-wing 410 sprint cars. Lernerville Speedway in Sarver, Pennsylvania has the Rush Sprint Car Series. Bemidji Speedway in Bemidji, New Mexico has the Northern Renegade Sprint Car Series. Cedar Lake Speedway in New Richmond, Wisconsin has the Upper Midwest Renegade Traditional Sprint Car Series. And rounding out racing action on Saturday night is the Lincoln Park Speedway in Putnamville, Indiana with their local non-wing 410 sprint car show. Rounding out the week, we'll start off at the Worldwide Technology Raceway in Madison, Illinois for the USAC Silver Crown Series as they run the Out Front 100. And final race on the weekend when it comes to non-wing sprint cars is Bemidji Speedway in Bemidji, Minnesota with the Northern Renegade Sprint Car Series. And that is all the racing action you can catch this week from coast to coast when it comes to non-wing sprint car and midget racing. That'll do it for another episode here on NonWing Worldwide. I'm Drake York. Thank you for joining us so much, and we'll see you next week.